Okay, hi. This time I will just do a quick introduction. This is some fantasy stories I've been writing off and on. Um, I haven't continued with them lately just because I'm not really confident, but um, maybe if you guys like them, I can keep sharing them and try to keep working on it. Okay, The Land of the Great Sky, Part 2. Inside the ruined building, the smell of black powder smoke wafted out of the building, and the rifleman tried to mend his frayed nerves. On the step, a rifle such as his was a mere totem, a warning to the tribes and hordes that someone of his complexion traveling alone had ventured from the coast prepared. A less seasoned traveler may have grumbled that the knights had brought trouble to this normally demure part of the steppe, a place of interest only to a handful of scholars, but the raiding party the knights chased away would have found him and made him a slave. He had already experienced one season of that fate and did not care to repeat it. His diversion to this region on his way to Serhadhane, the outer city of the Babarid Empire many hundreds of miles away, was ultimately fruitless. At one time, the city had been a middling commercial center on the way to the coast, but he had found few manuscripts or even inscriptions. Many centuries ago, the city was not different from the outer cities of the coastlands, or indeed Serhadhane, a place suited to functional commerce and industry, but meager in the way of knowledge or culture. The city had certainly been of fine craftsmanship, if a bit bland. Even in its ruined state, the neat, gridded streets still afforded easy travel between the buildings, and there was no fear of becoming lost in maze-like ancient streets. The sentimental side of the explorer reflected that many lifetimes and many dreams lived and died here. Tradesmen who had sought fortunes, craftsmen overseeing productive industries, the farmers who had presided over the land. If they had produced any cultural items, they had long been used as kindling or foundations to a temple to the Lord of the Sky, God of the steppe people. As animals, he made a noise of disapproval toward himself, dashed out the ruined tower, taking care not to slip on the crumbling narrow staircase. In the building where he had tied his mule, found his luggage intact, but the mule stolen. It was the way of the red wolves in this region. They took little interest in what they thought to be the baubles of people from the coastlands. Still, the explorer sat down in the shaded area of the ruined house and took a breath, drinking his precious remaining water. His detour to the city was fruitless, and his theories about the site were without merit. But why had the red wolves chased these knights away instead of killing them all? They had executed a nearly perfect ambush with superior numbers, and the cargo wagon was perfect plunder. The explorer also saw the bodies of the men killed baking in the sun ahead of him. It was not characteristic of knights to leave dead men without burial, and their parties nearly always included a cleric. He came to the heap of men. The horses he now saw had gone to the nearby riverbank to graze and drink. The explorer considered taking one with him to replace his late mule, considered that the knights may come back to take them. Did taking a dead man's horse constitute theft? He then turned over in his mind his very profession, which a more cynical man might characterize as rifling through the private correspondences and libraries of the dead, though more far removed from the present age, to study. At least on the frontier, the audience for scholarship was so slight that he did not receive such comments, though he had frequently come across them in the parties and feasts of certain knightly families that took pity on the Antiquities Institute enough to endow them. For the knights before him, He said a small prayer and for the dead red wolves. He weighed his options of crossing the river and entering the grazing lands of the Black Horses, a group with whom he had spent some time with before, as they had been kind enough to share fodder for his animals and aromatic Babarid chai a few seasons before. The sun started to dip low, and he elected to prepare for the night. He dragged his baggage into the ruined building where he had been before, the tower giving him more feeling of security than the other ruins, and prepared camp for himself on the stone floor. He opened his pouch of fuel pellets and discovered it was empty, and there was no suitable kindling to be found in many directions for miles. He ate from some dried meat and stale bread rolls he still possessed. As the night began, he was restless, and the darkness around him seemed nearly artificial, as if a black ink had been cast over the ruined city, instead of there merely being an absence of light. Craning his neck and trying to recall the frontiersman's almanac, he certainly thought tonight was supposed to be a full moon. Intense cold, out of character for the late spring, crept into the building, and he drew up his coat and put on his cloak, but it was as if the cold air was clawing into him through his clothes. He got up and walked about in the relatively small tower room, and looked out the windows that viewed the yet larger pair of ruined towers of the dead city, located in the center. In one slit window he saw a light from a flame. He girded himself with his belt and bandolier and checked the wheel lock of his rifle. The rifle gave him little comfort, and despite also carrying a curved Babarid dagger at his waist, it felt like a piece of dead weight. The approach to the tower passed slowly, with the flame guiding him through the black before him, dancing all too fast. He called out in his own language and in High Babarid, but it resulted in no response. Was he growing mad? He reached out at the darkness, expecting there to be silk or some other fabric, as if the whole of the ruins were covered in a cloth by some strange god. Apart from the tower, the shape of the crumbling structures went unseen, even as the explorer searched for them. He could barely register the stone pavement scraping against the bottoms of his boots. Ordinarily, in such a situation, he would offer a prayer, but the gift of that inclination did not reach his will. He cried out faintly at the back of his mind, but to no avail, growing more distant as he marched toward the light. Reaching the bottom of the tower, there was a door of an ancient soft metal and a handle like a valve. He turned it, and air hissed out, and he called inside, seeing the doorway to the stairs descending downward. He could not ascertain if there were stairs upward. Low light inside provided enough illumination for a person to navigate, somehow unaffected by the blackness outside. He tried to see if the dancing flame was visible from the landing, but to no avail. He descended as if his body moved automatically of its own accord, and his will was a spectator. After more time, he reached another door-like entryway and turned the handle, and again air hissed out with a sweet, damp quality. He entered the chamber, passed a smaller room with another valve door. As he moved forward, the door behind him sealed. Air hissed from unseen vents for a moment, followed by a screech. Dim lamps flickered in here, and the flame had the same dancing quality as the mysterious tower light. He opened the next sealed door, and hot white light unsettled him until his vision adjusted, and the visage of a woman met him, but she had the height that surpassed any woman he had ever met, and a spindly body with skin color outside any natural pigment. Her hair was long and tinged with a slick green, which framed an angular face that ended in a pointed chin. Eyes that were all black orbs stared at him, and a fiendish grin appeared on her face. Her large hands ended in talons. The explorer felt small, a rare occurrence in his life. The floor of the chamber was covered by yellow sand, but it had an unusual ceramic texture. The creature reclined in a kind of sofa fashioned for its proportions, woven out of steppe textiles. "You join me, Professor," it said, lips moving, but the sound did not appear to match. Waving one of its hands, the sand on the floor animated into a chair, and the explorer was taken into it. "Let me look at you," it said, surveying him and scratching a piece of skin from his face and making blood trickle. "A Ferengi, but born here. My children told me they saw you puttering about in my ruined city." The force departed his limbs as it spoke, its aroma, a sickly bouquet of unwashed flesh and perfume. It wore clothes, a shawl of silk material embroidered with unknown script. "I have the library you seek." It waved a hand, and the explorer noticed a glowing amulet bracelet on its wrist. The sand fell away from side wall, revealing another sealed door that did bear an old Tangric inscription of runes for a library with a later Old Babarid plaque below it. "The people of this city received their knowledge from me, their mother, from the world beyond. I taught them everything, and only now they return to me." Its smile opened more and showed sharp teeth. It was as if it was truly reminiscing, as one did, over memories of friends and feast days. "You can help. I gave them knowledge. I can give it to you." As if the Redeemer seized his will, or simple academic egotism, Explorer found the force to speak. This city was a regional trading entrepot, 1500 to 1000 years ago. You are a loathsome Devagul, whose species did not appear here in the region until 2 centuries after that, when the city had been abandoned. The Red Wolves did not migrate to this sector of the frontier until a century before. The library and its contents, I can therefore assume, could not have come from whatever knowledge you purport to give. The Devagul appeared taken aback, an unexpected reaction for such a creature. It struck him with a slap, sending him crashing into the wall. His rifle fell to the floor. "How dare you?" the creature screamed. "I have more knowledge than you could ever hope to attain. I am a member of the nobility." The animated sand began to unsettle and flow with the Devagul's rage, revealing bones and the detritus of past victims. It screamed at him, but the explorer found the strength to take up his rifle, aim it, and fire a shot square in the beast's midsection. The noise rang in the enclosed chamber, the scent of black powder, for once a welcome aroma. The ball tore through the creature and exited its flesh. In his momentary shock, he did not see the sand forming around him. Then it seized him and bound him to the wall better than any iron shackles could. "You disgusting man, sickening pigman like the eunuchs who bound me here. You will be a sacrifice. I will make an example of you." With the creature's petulant outburst, more of the animated sand covered the explorer and forced him into sleep.